Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. This show is brought to you by Simplifying, which has been helping build trust in travel for over a decade. Through in-depth conversation with aviation leaders, Sustainability in the Air breaks through the current clutter and provides a clear roadmap for the future. It's about time we embarked on creating a net zero future for the industry, together. This season of the podcast is brought to you by Carbon Click, leaders in managing carbon offsetting programs for top global airlines. Without further ado, here's your host, Shashank Nigam, CEO of Simplifying.
Welcome to the final episode of Sustainability in the Air, Season 1. I can't believe it has been 10 weeks since we've been running this podcast. We launched on April 22nd, Earth Day, and I've had the privilege of speaking with some very smart, intelligent, and proactive and passionate people over the course of the last 10 weeks and learning about what they are doing in terms of making travel cleaner, flying more sustainable, and generally making flying magical again. I remember the conversation with Scott Kirby at United on how he is creating a better world for his children. And that's his own personal, passionate reason for doing this. I remember Tony Douglas from Etihad in the first episode so diligently running us through how they managed to run the Greenliner program and now the A350 program. I was very fascinated with some of the completely geeked out conversations I had, like about universal hydrogen and the different colors of hydrogen. But you know what? The one question I asked every single person was, what would you advise those who are just getting started in this journey? And this episode is a compilation of some of the best replies we got for that question. Here are some of the highlights from Season 1 of Sustainability in the Air. But before you get started, I would like you to just pause this podcast for just 10 seconds and go to the podcast platform where you're listening to this, and please leave us a review. It will do us a world of good because it will spread this podcast and some of the insights being shared with the top industry leaders with more people. Your review will do us wonders. Please just pause for a second, leave us a review on whichever platform you're on, and then come back and continue listening to this best of episode from Sustainability in the Air. Once again, thank you so much for your support. We will be back with Season 2 with some fantastic guests, and I cannot wait to reveal them. Follow us on LinkedIn. Follow me personally, Shashank Nigam, on LinkedIn, Simplifying, as well as sustainabilityintheair.com. And we look forward to being in touch. Thank you once again.
The one thing we could do is predict that there would be an end to the pandemic. We didn't know when, of course, but logic always suggested that there would be a point where the pandemic would move to the next phase and over time perhaps eradicate itself. The one thing we were equally sure with was there is no obvious solution to the sustainability challenge anytime soon. And consequently, it's more likely to be the ultimate differentiator of who the winners, who the losers, who will actually sustain themselves in the world of commercial aviation going forward. So I guess if the question was from somebody who was doing a startup right now, I would probably say, make this your number one priority, because environmental sustainability and commercial sustainability will increasingly sit in the same sentence.
It's about embracing the challenge openly and honestly. I mean, aviation isn't the enemy. People love to travel the world and see their friends and family and to fulfill business opportunities. But I mean, decarbonising aviation, it's hard and it needs a lot of collaboration. So I think for the airline sharing what it's doing, about fuel efficient aircraft or using SAF, being open and honest and encouraging travellers to reduce their emissions by travelling in economy class or travelling light or travelling direct. And then, if you're giving travellers that opportunity to take more action through carbon offsetting as they want, make sure that your program offers high quality projects, that complete transparency around the transaction, and then a cumulative impact dashboard, like share the impact that it's having in the world and build that community of people that actually want to take action.
From an airline's perspective, to be embracing this is to be engaging with your audience and building that brand alignment and loyalty with your audience who care about this. 81% of consumers care about climate change, but we're all humans and we want to connect. Like Michelle says, we need to connect with one another and we need to appreciate this beautiful planet that we live on. Flying is a necessary part of that, and until we have new technologies 10, 20 years down the track that allow us to fly without, maybe on a higher percentage of SAF, maybe it's on completely new technology that doesn't exist today. Until then, we absolutely need to rely on offsetting to help us allow continuity of the industry to get to that point. It's a hump we have to get over. It's a total no-brainer that this is incorporated into the aviation journey.
I encourage them to learn more about it. I mean, this is not unique to airlines. This is other CEOs. There's not many that know enough about it, about what's real and what's not. And sometimes they believe they're doing the right thing, when their team says, if we write $1 million check to the Conservancy Fund, they'll offset 100% of our emissions. But they don't realize that what is really happening isn't changing anything in the world. And so first and foremost is learn about it. And the second thing is don't get lost in what is happening today. Far too many of them get stuck with, well, here's the cost of SAF, and I don't know where to go buy it today. Because this should be like safety. It's not a competitive issue. It should be about all of us raising the standards to the highest level possible. But that's mostly what I do. And if they don't do it, then you should fly on an airline that does.
First thing, in my advice to anyone, whenever there is the future involved, is always keep an open mind. So that's the first thing. And get to understand the fundamentals. I mean, I'm not asking anybody to become an expert in electrochemistry or, combustion or, aircraft performance. But, get at least to understand the fundamental trades and where what makes sense and where what doesn't make sense, from not only a technical perspective, but there's an economic perspective, an operational perspective. And, once you do that, then you'll see that, there is no one solution that, is the killer app across all segments of aviation. But you will also realize that hydrogen has a very important role to play. And there's no, the other thing about sustainable aviation fuel is that you're still emitting, carbon dioxide at altitude. And so even though you say, I'm going to take it out at the ground and for net zero, it's okay. In reality, you're still producing soot and all the other particles and stuff at altitude, which you don't have in hydrogen. In that case, you're basically creating water, especially in the fuel cell case, there's no water. In the gaseous case, there's some NOx, but there are things you can do to reduce the NOx as well. So in the direct combustion, there's NOx, but we can do stuff to reduce that. But the bottom line is keep an open mind, because SAF is not the silver bullet.
Well, I mean, I've talked about a lot of the technologies I like. I think my favorite right now is the direct air capture. I think that's, super compelling. But what I'm most excited about is the fact that we're all talking about this so much, right? And, there's so many great companies out there. There's a lot of investment in startups, and that's important because it's expensive technology. You need investments, strong investment into this technology in order to make it work. If it's going to be successful, it's because we're investing in it. So I'm excited about the amount of investment that's out there. There's so much. In fact, as an airline CBC, we're competing with like the world to invest in some of these startups. And sometimes it's hard to get into those rounds because there's some very, very compelling funds out there that are just focused on climate tech, and that's great. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the fact that we have these coalitions of thought leaders that are trying to solve these problems and really dig into what are the ones that are most important, these technologies that are most important. I think those are very exciting. And then there's a lot of adjacent tech that's starting to think about how they contribute to the sustainability problem. We have a couple investments in AI companies, that are using data to solve these problems. How much fuel you burn, how you track and load fuel onto your aircraft, saving around the edges. You need that. You need that just as much as you need a direct air company that's making fuel. So you need all of those things to work together in order for this to be successful. And if we meet these goals that are very aggressive, it's not because of one piece of technology. It's going to be because of all of these pieces of technology all coming together.
Well, first they got to talk with people in the been there, done it category, and there really are only a couple ways of doing this. Think about it. We know we're starting with CO2 in the atmosphere. We know what it looks like. It's called SAF, right? Let's see. Then it's a question of what's the price to get it delivered and when. So it isn't even there's trade-offs along the way in the business system, but they're all the same, and they're going to have various flavors of where you spent the capital, the operating costs, what your sustainability footprint and your energy mix looks like. That's where the nuance is, right? So it's not that hard. And as far as the hydrogen goes, cool. We actually are working on some of those programs too. Why? Because I got a whole lot of hydrogen I'm making from my excess wind. So people say, well, would you work with us on developing, airline plane? Sure. Hell yeah. I got stuff to sell that'll help your plane work. I got green hydrogen. Everywhere I go, there's going to be green hydrogen around me. So heck yeah, we'll do that too. And so put it on a timeline and we'll be there as a supplier. Cool with us. We're all good. It's all about the same problem, same systems. So it's not for someone who's coming along. I think if you're a CEO or the financial officer is the one who's more important, probably. You're going, let's see, most of my cost of goods sold is jet fuel. And so I don't want to increase cost. Cool. Guess what? You don't have to. Okay, a little bit. We get a little premium. But that's not going to make or break the bank. What you do have to do is commit to buy the stuff. And so that is hard. Not all airlines can afford to even say that they can do that because they're not in the financial strength to do that. Think about that. They can't. You'd be shocked at how many we go, hey, yeah, take or pay contract. You got to put up your balance sheet, promise your balance sheet, or you got to put up a letter of credit. They can't do that. They're not financially strong enough to do that. So now you have other ones who go, wait a sec. You mean that if our cash cost to produce is similar to Petrojet. So in other words, if I didn't have to pay back the plant and I didn't have to do depreciation, the actual just incremental cost to manufacture is the same as Petrojet. Okay? The people I'm competing against in Petrojet world have fully paid off, fully depreciated plants. So the really smart CFOs, they go, hey, wait a second. Your cash cost is the same and we're really transparent, so we just show everybody the data. Your cash cost is the same as the Petrojet guys. Yep, that's right. Well, that means your plant is paid off. You don't need any carbon credit and support. Yep, that's right. That's what that means. We figured this out already. And so, that's different than that's different than what they thought. And so we're out here, that's why we're getting business, is that we're just transparent with stuff, man.
Well, it is, and everybody's in kind of different markets. And we consider ourselves to be a regional airline, but, we're really kind of, everybody talks about urban air mobility. Well, that's us. I mean, we're already doing that. We fly into downtown cores. And, And we do that because we can land on the water in a marine environment. And in British Columbia, it just so happens that virtually every metropolitan area has a place to land a seaplane. So although there are places up the valley that don't, and they're well served by conventional aircraft, but certainly on the coast, that's when you're looking at taking a ferry for 4 or 5 hours from door to door, because you have to consider it door to door. That's how we kind of gauge our impact on the commuter market, or fly for door to door, maybe 45 minutes to an hour from your office to your home or whatever. It's kind of doesn't make sense for you to be sitting on the. I mean, sometimes you take your car, it makes sense, but as a walk-on passenger, if the ticket is within your economic means, it certainly time is money. So I think once you start getting, looking at the regional airlines in terms of what their markets are and how far they're going and all of that, I think they're all, they all have somewhat different, well, not all of them different, but people have, probably our companies have different missions, and the sort of logistics that go with being electric or hybrid or whatever it is are different for different airlines depending on what they're trying to achieve. But it's certainly coming, and as I said before, I think anybody that just ignores it and then all of a sudden sees that there's another viable disruption coming in terms of aircraft, they don't want to be blindsided by that. And they need to be a part of
it. From my perspective, I would say that you need to look at your fleet composition as your first step, because typically a lot of airlines are still flying older generation aircraft that are less fuel efficient. And so looking at your fleet, you can make decisions on the basis of economics plus sustainability on what your fleet composition should be. And certainly we at Pratt & Whitney would love to have all of our airline customers buy more geared turbofan engines and advantages as they become out into the environment. And so fleet composition and fleet renewal is certainly one major element for a sustainability-minded airline executive. And then the next thing I would mention is, of course, sustainable aviation fuels, finding how you get sustainable aviation fuels, how you get the pricing right, getting the contracts with producers, continuing to establish and engage in support for policies on a global basis that will enable the capacity to build and the price to become more in line by creating a level playing field with fossil fuels. So, within your own, governments, beginning to work and ensure that they understand the criticality and the importance of sustainable aviation fuels, as a key next step. And then, of course, the third thing is, once you've done those two things, there is an area of offsetting and out of sector elements that, a sustainability minded airline executive should be aware of and pursuing. Obviously, it's not as popular as the prior two ones, which are definitely methods to reduce. But we're looking at this and we're seeing that the necessity is there, especially in the near term, to help offset and decarbonize our industry. And then last is keep looking at all the great technologies that the airline or the OEMs are producing, both aircraft and engine manufacturers, and seek to find ways to introduce those technologies over time as they become available and the infrastructure and other issues become clear.
It's a great question. I've never worked at an airline at all, so advising a CEO gets a little bit challenging for me. I'll say a couple things. One is that this is largely a collective action problem. Like, even if you say SAFs are the future, it's clear that voluntary goals from airlines are not going to get us there. It's just the price gap is too large. So, airlines will need to advise governments on setting good policy. The good is after, I would say, I've been working on this for 15 years, and for the first time ever, I would say, we are starting to see pretty solid policy being set by a government, and that it's in the European Union. So the European Union is proposing a lot of good measures under what we call the Fit for 55 package. So a good SAF mandate, emissions trading for aviation. Some will disagree with it, but there is a proposal for a kerosene tax in order to start to bridge the price gap. Watch what Europe is doing, and we think that they're broadly doing good things. There are some really interesting sort of voluntary efforts or private efforts that are ongoing, and I'll just highlight a couple that we're working on. There's a group called the Science-Based Targets Initiative. It's called SBTI, and that's being run by several groups, World Wildlife Fund, World Resources Institute, and 2 other groups. And they are helping not just airlines, but a variety of industries set midterm climate targets. And so there's now a pathway in which airlines can sign up to a sort of a certified well below 2 degree temperature target and emissions target. And also we're working on a 1.5 degree target. And ICCT is leading the technical work on that. So we started to see a number of airlines. I know American in particular has been approved for an SBTI target. That's one. The other thing, which I think is really interesting, is that some travel search engines are starting to put out emissions estimates by itinerary for flyers. Google Flights is doing Kayak, Skyscanner, and Light Flights are the 4 examples. I think this is a really important effort to mobilize consumers and give them a mechanism for rewarding the lowest emitting flights with their dollars. So I think that's really important. I would like to see more airlines to support that and make sure that those travel search engines are giving good, transparent estimates to the consumer, because I think it's part of the solution set.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. We hope you liked it and will share it with your network. Please also leave us a review. Awareness is the key to a green future. Your support will help our insights on sustainable aviation reach a wider audience. You can also write to us at podcast@simpliflying.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website, simpliflying.com, and join the movement.